number 9. So we are working through our 20-day challenge in the month of May to make a different block, at least 20 different blocks. So we are now on block number 9. So this is called the contrary wife. Now, I don't know why it's called that. I'm not even going to give you an explanation for it because I couldn't if I tried. But it's a very easy block. So what we need are 3 different colors. You will need the background, or what we're deeming to be the background, and we need 2 blocks. I cut them to be 5 inches. The measurements call for 4 7/8. I'm not doing eighths. So we just went up to 5. We're going to square the blocks down for half square triangles anyway. So I'll just waste a little extra fabric not to have to cut the 7/8. So then we'll need, for the other half of the half square triangle, we'll need 2 of a dark. And so I went with these. So both of these are 5 inches square. Then the block itself will be put together like a 9 patch, and we will need a lighter fabric, and we'll need 5 of these. And these 5 measure at 4.5 inches. So let's get started, because the only real prep work that we have to do before we start assembling the block are the half square triangles. Now, I didn't bother because this was easy enough to do. I didn't bother to prep them like I normally would before I get started with the sewing. So all you need is a straight edge, and this is about the best one that I have right now, to draw a diagonal line from one corner to the other. So you'll measure your straight edge, you'll line your straight edge up with one corner, you'll line it up with the other corner. Whoops. And this is why I don't use these. But the good thing is it's chalk, and I can get that line. That line is way off. And that's because this moved. Let me try this the other way. Maybe if I do it towards me. Usually I just use a pencil. And I cleaned up last night. And in the process of cleaning up, I moved the pencil, realized it after, and I was like, I don't feel like getting up to go get the pencil. And this life would be a lot easier if I went and got that pencil. Okay, we got the line. Albeit shabby, I'll be able to follow it. And let's do the other one. So pencils and pens obviously work better than the rotary wheels on this one, but it was the closest thing that I could grab. And I was like, oh, this will work. Okay, that'll work. Okay. So the next thing that we're doing is lining up our fabric. Wrong sides, right sides together. The wrong sides facing up, especially with that line. Then we're going to take this to our machine, and we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch line on either side of the line that we drew. When you're doing half square triangles, you go to either side of the line. When you're doing flying geese, you stitch on the line. Now, I also have been working on projects all week, so you'll notice the thread is low. I have another spool waiting to go, but we don't waste thread. And the bobbin is actually low too. They might run out at the same time. but I'm not going to start a new bobbin and a new spool and then never finish those. So absolutely, we're going to finish it. So you can see the two lines, and they're on either side of the line that I drew. And we'll do the same thing with this one. Once we finish these, and this is like the quickest method for making half square triangles. So once we finish these, we will cut them in half. We will press them open, and we will trim them up to the measurement that we need, which is 4.5 inches. So I did make blocks. There are some patterns when you go online, especially free patterns, where they will show you how to do them with 2 triangles. This is the quick way of making 2 at a time. Even if you only need 1, it's still a quicker way. And you don't, when you're cutting on the diagonal, you're cutting on what's called the bias, and that's the stretchiest part of your fabric. And so if you can help it, you don't want to disturb that bias as much as possible. So this will help to avoid waving with your fabric, because if you pull it too much, it'll kind of bow on you. So we'll take this to our ironing board. We can press open, press close. I will always tell you it is up to you. I'm going to press these to the dark side, press them closed. If I lay it with the dark side up top and I open it up, the seam is automatically under that dark side. Again, you can always prefer to open up your seams. You can press them open. That is up to you. Again, there are times where it makes sense to do it that way, and there are times when you just feel like, I want to do it this way, and this is the way I like it. Sometimes it makes sense when it reduces the bulk. That's all meeting up together. And sometimes it just doesn't matter. I think I want to use the square. Okay. So we're going to take our ruler. We're going to line the corner up. We want this to be 4.5 inches square. I want everything to go through these dots, which will guarantee a closer opportunity to make sure that that diagonal is still going through the center of this half square triangle. We're trimming these again to 4.5. And sometimes it takes a little bit of maneuvering to get it there. And better to take the time to get it there and try to get it as perfect as possible. So we do want to make sure that line goes right through one of those sides, one of those corners. And then here's like the scrap that's left. Like I would have been pushing it, and it was just a hair off when I made these. So I shouldn't be too far off. Keyword is shouldn't. Now, some of the blocks that I've worked on, if you go back and look at previous videos, they took a little bit longer to do because they involved a couple more steps, especially with making more than 4 half square triangles and more than making 4 big half square triangles. So these half square triangles are a pretty decent size. So it's not going to take long to make this one at all. And depending on which day of the week it is for my other blocks that I will be making, I will be like real strategic with which days I'm making easier blocks and which days I have a little bit more time to make a more complicated block. Okay, we have one more to go. Oops. We're trimming, and as we're trimming off these little edges, which they like to call dog ears, right? I think it looks more like a sheep, but that's me. The great thing, again, about these blocks is that you can use them however you see fit. So if you see fit to make an entire quilt out of one block, you're just making the same block over and over and over again. You can make an entire quilt out of 2 blocks that you repeat over and over and over again. Or you can make what is commonly referred to as like a sampler quilt, where you make several different blocks and they all come together to make a quilt. Now, if I'm doing a sampler to be, you can make it any way that you like, but it gives me a chance to audition some blocks, to audition the way that I would like those blocks to show up in terms of fabric choice. Did I cut these wrong? I cut too much off of this one. We're going to see if we can make it work. So it's a 1/4 inch off, and I can easily enough make that work. I'm going to make it work. So you can see it. It's not much, but I'll make it work. Okay, so we're going to lay this out the way that we want it to go. Move this out the way because I don't need that. This is a layout. We remind you of the Jacob's ladder, except these are not 4 patches. And boom. That's the layout for the block. And like I said, this one I cut just a little short, but we're going to make it work. And that's going to take a little bit of doing, but we're going to get it to work. Okay, so we're going to slide these over. Bring my machine in, and we're going to treat this like a 9 patch and just turn columns 3 over onto columns 2. And I am going to, oh, I see what I did. I didn't make sure that corner was square. And that's still not going to help me much. But there was a little bit of a fold. And in some of the other videos I said, and I did not do the thing that I say that you need to do, which is to make sure that seam is flat. It's going to give me just a little bit more to work with, which is perfect. And I see what I'm going to do. And we're just going one right down that column underneath the other. And we are going to see just how close we make it. With the bobbin and that thread. It looks like the bobbin might run out first. I stitched this one on the wrong way. Okay, so today is let's see how many mistakes Jennifer can make day. Well, we're still going to make this work. So when I had to rethink the block, I went in the wrong direction. So this is in this corner, and this is like that. Okay. Okay, so that looks right. So we're going to add these on here. We'll go back and fix that top one in a second just to get the 3 rows done. So we're adding on that third block, that third unit, third square. Okay. So now we're not going to do that because we ran out of the bobbin. But I knew that I had that bobbin was running out. So I did prepare with additional bobbins already ready to go. And I try not to have like extra bobbins left over. Whenever I'm finishing projects, I do try to end them at some point just so that I don't have a lot of bobbins just sitting. And quilting is a great time to get rid of them. Because you can't really see the thread that often peeking through, so you can get away with using a variety of bobbin colors. Okay, now that one's done. So we didn't even sew through this one. Okay, back from the station break of not having the bobbin. And this one goes up in, that's the bottom one. Okay. So they say, do as I say and not as I do, right? You keep them in the order that you're supposed to keep them in. When you throw yourself off, you go back, you check. If you don't go back and check, you run into issues. So that center one looks the way it should look. Sometimes, so I have a seam that didn't work the way that it was supposed to because I cut it wrong. So when I cut the fabric, I cut it a little too short, and that was my fault. So I have to go back and adjust for that, and I can adjust for that by, just kind of fudging it a little bit. It's only a 1/4 inch, so I can make it work. But I just have to remember that's the one that I'll be fudging it with to get it to work. So that means that instead of a 1/4 inch on either side, that one's only going to catch at an eighth. So half of a quarter. So that was my fault. That what now? I could have cut another block, but I'd rather see if it's going to work this way and save that, that piece. But if it's not, then I'll go back and fix it. Okay. So I'm just laying those out because somebody needs to double check to make sure that she does things the right way. Okay. So we lay them back out to make sure that they're correct. I'm going to flip these over. And what we are going to do is press these out, these in, and these out. What that will do is it'll help me to do a nest or to butt those corners up, those seams up. So it's nesting the seam or like butting the seams up so that I'll have hopefully perfect corners. So I'm going to press these this way. No, I'm going to press these this way. I'm going to press these this way and these this way. And what also will happen is because I'm pressing it this way, this seams right here won't be sitting on top of each other, which means I won't have as much fabric and it'll create less bulk. Okay, those seams nice and flat. And again, I'm pressing, not ironing. We don't need to iron because if we iron, then our seams sometimes, our fabric sometimes will stretch. So these are going this way, these are going in, these are going to go that way. And if I didn't mess up, the block would be done. going to take the first two. We're going to take the seams and line those seams up. And I just use my fingers to kind of push them in opposite directions. And then clip. And then we'll stitch the 2 rows together. And then 2 more rows together, and then this will be done. So when I took and made another quilt, I think it was the woven star, that one took me a while to do because there were a bunch of moving parts with that. So it just depends on the block you're working on with what will take, shorter times, which will take longer times. I do like to check. So you can see that it's a little off from that corner, but that's perfect there. If that bothers me, I can redo that. And that might bother me. But it's this that's creating the problem. It might bother me. We'll see. We'll see how this one comes out. When you do the quilting of the quilt, once the quilt top is done and you're adding the batting and the binding and the design, sometimes those little faux pas can be blended in and you'll never know they existed. And other times they will just bother the quilter. You'll make your choice as to whether that bothers you or not. It kind of sort of bothers me in the fact that I know that I squared everything up, but it's that one block that I knew I was off on, and I tried to fix it, and I didn't necessarily fix it that well. Sometimes I can get it spot on fixed, sometimes I can't. Okay, let's see. So see how that one points right the way that it's supposed to? And then, but look how this one is just a little off right there. But from the distance, you could tell this is still off, but you can see everything else. And I don't know that I can fix that. Might be able to. Somewhere here on this table is a seam ripper. Just want to see. Because nothing else is going to bother me. That one is going to bother me just a little bit. And maybe if I come up a little bit, like maybe if I was off on the seam just a little bit, maybe that might make the difference. But if you go and you look at a lot of quilts, there aren't a lot of quilts that are perfect. And I can't remember which one was off. I'm going to try something and see if it works. That might work. And the keyword is might. Might, might, might. And I don't have much room to get over that with. And my thread is saying, girl, we're going to be back here with you tomorrow. It's a little closer, but not a cigar. And that's as straight as it's going to get. So I am going to leave it because that's going to be okay. And then let's press it. And again, that was done more for the fact that I did not, I cut one of my half square triangles at the wrong measurement. And I was looking right at it and I still cut it wrong. It happens. I could go back and just make another half square triangle. It's one of the reasons why when I'm buying fabric, I do buy a little extra. So if they tell me 2 yards, I might get 2.5. Sometimes pattern designers will have you buy a little extra fabric to account for mess ups, mishaps. Sometimes they won't. Because they recognize a lot of people make mistakes and wish they would have had, especially because what happens with fabric, it's like clothes. They have seasons, and unless it's just something that's really popular, like a blender, when they go out of season, they go out of season. So when you bought the last of it, you bought the last of it. Okay. So here is the finished block. And again, we can look for the error and immediately find where it was, and I won't call it an error, but where it just didn't line up the way that I wanted it to. And I can either, and like this block is compensating for this block because this is the one that I messed up on. So either I'll go back in and fix this one, and that will automatically help me to get this one right. So I'll make some decisions on that because I'll sleep on it and it'll bother me and then I'll fix it. But this is the contrary wife block. So this is finished and we have now finished block number 9. Even though you know the next time you see this might be fixed because that might bother me enough that I may actually fix it. So have a good one.